Teacher, I don't know if I should take IELTS or PTE. Don't worry, in this video I bring a former student who took both exams and we're gonna talk about that. And hopefully from this video you can decide which test is best for you. Let's go for the interview in 3, 2, and 1. Let's go. Let's welcome Christian. Christian, welcome to the podcast. How's everything going?
Thank you so much, Emilio, for the opportunity to share, from my own experience doing both tests, English tests. So yeah, very happy to be here. And yeah,
One thing that I normally tell students is, I can't talk about the test for hours, but the reality is sometimes people don't want to only listen to a teacher. So I said, you are a busy person, you took both exams, and probably some students may relate with you and with your story. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
yeah, sure. Thank you, Emilio. Yeah, I am originally from Chile. Right now, I am here in Melbourne because my son lives here, but I am currently living in Tokyo, Japan. So I moved from Chile to Japan in January 2024. Professionally, my main background is I am electrical engineer. I work in the renewable energy industry around 15 years already. Mainly, most of my time I have been working for international companies where I need to report myself in English. But generally, I start studying English, when I was finishing high school. That actually I got, the interest of start studying or being aware of the importance of having a second language. And then during the university, I started taking, let's say, taking different subjects from other programs or other engineering programs by myself. Also, have the opportunity to have or do an exchange student program in Germany. I was, of course, learning a bit of German at that time, but most of my time I was able to communicate myself in English. So it was a, let's say, a way to learn, and but put it in practice, right, with real life or meeting people. So yeah, that's my main background or story, because I start learning English, very old, no from my beginning.
But it sounds like you started very, quote unquote very old, and then you basically have continued, right? It's like this long journey from high school time into university, and basically working in your English skills. And well, and now you're recording this in Australia. So important question: where is the test in all this story? Were you thinking of taking the exam, like when you were in university, or it was more like you took the exam to come to Australia, or
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, no, in my case, since I got a kind of working visa in Japan, the only requirement was having an intermediate or high English level. Actually, the company for my position in Japan, they were based more in my professional experience and also having minimal English skill in order to lead a team, create, communicate internally in the organization. And my main interest about making the English test is because I never did an English test before. I never took the TOEFL, the IELTS in the past, so I needed to start preparing. And I knew in my case, since I am quite busy person, because of my work and also personal commitments, I don't have so much time to study, and that's why I met Emilio in order to help me out with the English preparation for the English test. So that's why I decided, to try both in order to see with which one I feel comfortable, which one I can achieve the minimal points required, because I am planning to do an skill assessment of electrical engineering in Australia. So the main motivation behind was I need to get the minimal points required, and that's why I end up doing both tests. Yeah.
important question that I am sure people are wondering. When you first contacted me, you said, Emilio, let's do IELTS. And we went full in for IELTS preparation. How did you feel before taking the test? And then, after you passed the test or you got a good score in your first attempt, then you said, okay, Emilio, now I want to take PTE for this skills assessment. So just wondering, how was that initial first time taking IELTS for anyone who's thinking, okay, maybe I have to take IELTS. I'm an engineer, or and then we'll talk a bit about PTE.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel more comfortable with the IELTS, the general test, because I have the opportunity to, the speaking part is evaluated by a person. That's the main reference, and I felt more comfortable because in terms of the kind of question that you are asked to answer during the test are more general, more common. Even if we need to write the essay, for example, also you can talk about the general topic. So for me, honestly speaking, I know we are going to move to the PTA later, but I felt more comfortable doing the IELTS rather than the PTA academic. Yeah.
And before we continue with the interview, if you're enjoying this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and remember, if you need a natty translation to come to Australia, or maybe you want to get ready for the exams, check the link in the description. All right, now let's keep going. Now that you mentioned the IELTS, I totally agree. I tell my students, look, you could have somebody. I hope you think Emilio is very friendly, and is with this conversation. You may have an examiner who's friendly like this, or maybe who's like neutral, or maybe someone who's a bit more serious. But you're right, like having that human element in the IELTS test can make a big difference, especially for those who get really nervous only talking to the microphone. And you mentioned the essay. I guess one big point for any IELTS test taker, and probably you will tell us a bit about this. In IELTS, we have double the time to write an essay compared to PTE. So it is challenging because a person is marking, but maybe it means less pressure in the sense that it could be challenging with the tough marking, but you have more time to prepare the essay, to write, to check it. But in PTE, it's like a race against time. That's what some people say.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree with your point. Actually, in my case, since most of my career, I don't have I am not afraid of speaking, let's say, English, even if I know I am not native, right? I have like a professional English that allows me to work, lead the team, work in a environment using English mainly for reporting our colleagues or people that reports to me, from other cultures. So in general, in my case, I feel very comfortable, even if I can make any mistake in English. At least I have the confidence, that kind of personality that even if I make a mistake when I speak, I don't care, right? I am communicating the message. And if I made a mistake, I try to do it again. So, I mean, that kind of attitude make the difference. So that's why I feel that IELTS make me feel more comfortable while for example, you are in the PTE with the recording. Yeah, you don't know actually, you're just speaking, but, no one is receiving that message of the way that you're communicating yourself. So at least I feel that in the speaking part with the IELTS, you can actually, show yourself with the attitude while you are speaking English and communicating the right message. Yeah, that's my point of view. But this is depends on the personality of the each person, right? Some of them might feel they could be more shy, and they prefer, for example, everything do it in the computer. So I will say that also you need to find which is more suitable for you, because from my side, I have heard from other friends that for them they feel more comfortable giving the PT, just interacting with the computer because they are a bit more shy, right? So that's what I can comment.
Totally. And look, I think you mentioned a key tip, and I will repeat it. And it is that I'll just be very Latino. And for anyone watching, don't be shy.
Mm.
I like that what you just said, because sometimes it's like, okay, I know that maybe I'm not speaking 100% perfect English. There might be a few areas of improvement here and there, but hey, that allows me to work professionally. I can have conversations, and sometimes that limiting belief of, oh, I'm making mistakes or my English is not perfect, sometimes can really make someone who perhaps is very outgoing in Spanish, or even maybe you are shy or in another language, and then they go like inwards, and it's almost like a shell. They close up, and then
Yeah.
that can be really hard when it comes to learning a language, regardless of what exam you take. So I think that is a key tip, that putting ourselves out there, and also showing this, that yeah, look, we can make mistakes, and I can do, I can maintain conversations, work professionally, and my English doesn't have to be perfect. Of course, it is good to
Yeah.
improve, but having that mentality, I think, would help lots of people out there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Emilio. And in fact, we need to be very realistic. Like Chile, for example, or other countries in Latin America, we don't have the advantage that Mexico has, for example, when they are next to US, right? In Mexico, you meet people, and generally most of them are capable of speaking English, and I mean being with a neighbor country that the native language is English, it helps you a lot. That actually make a difference, you know. But in Chile, we know that generally, in terms of the population, no high percentage actually of the people is capable of able to speak English unless you are coming from a, let's say, a family that they have the possibility to afford a bilingual school, you know, and actually you grow up speaking both languages at the same time. So the reality in the Chile is different. So the only way that you can differentiate yourself sometime, yeah, is thanks to the language. And that's what I did. For example, in professional speaking, I feel proud that even if I don't have an English, you know, that is a native level, of course, at least I reach a level that allow me to lead teams in the organizations. You know, in fact, you know, the first international company that interviewed me in Chile, the interview was in English with the HR manager and also with my boss, who is a Chilean guy. This boss actually, he went to a bilingual school, for example, so he has a very high English level, but he recognized that at least my English level at that time, this is around 2016, like 10 years ago, it was, you know, it was, let's say, above the average of the other people that were interviewed. And I got the job not just because of my professional skill, also because I was making a difference, at least having like intermediate English level that allowed me to communicate internally, because the company was from Ireland. You know, it was an Irish company. They needed to hire people with a minimal intermediate English level. Mm.
I would also say to what you just mentioned, I think it is key to emphasize that everyone is different. You might be watching this video and I have students who, as you said, they come from Mexico, bilingual schools. Maybe they had the opportunity to do exchange programs. You mentioned that you started learning English when you were in university.
Mm.
I've taught students who have been in exchange programs when they were in high school. So then it's like we're I mean, and especially with social media, with the internet, we see these people, or maybe we meet a colleague and we go, oh, this person speaks really well, but then, or this person is getting PTE 80 or 90 or IELTS of a very high score. And then it's like, oh, but I'm not getting that score. But at the same time, it's like, well, but you need to also be mindful of where you are starting, because then you're not being fair to yourself. It's almost like if we go to the gym today and then we say we want to be professional bodybuilders in 2 months, and then we look at someone who has an incredible physique, but this person has been doing bodybuilding for, I don't know, 5, 10 years. Then, of
Yeah, that's
course,
true.
I what I'm trying to say, and I like how you put that example, is that everyone's starting point is different.
That's correct.
But I think the big powerful message in your story is, and this is also what I tell my students, is look, whether you are doing cleaning, whether you're doing hospitality, whether you are starting an admin job, it's like just don't let that, let's say, initial stage of, okay, I have to work in building my skills. I mean, you could eventually, start leading a team, for example, like you're doing. I'm sure maybe at the beginning you didn't say, oh, let me learn English to lead a team, but then it's something that, happened over time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, in my case, since I have an extrovert personality, generally I love interacting with people. Doing networking is part of my daily job, in fact. So in all the companies I have been working from, Chile, now Japan, or either the company in Japan also they have offices in Australia. Yeah, one of the main things is like depending to your role, you are more exposed to use your English, more frequently or more often compared to other roles that they could be more technical. I am electrical engineer, but I am working more on the business development side, more commercial stuff. I need to negotiate, so that's why I am exposed. But also, it's aligned with my personality, right? I am quite extrovert, and even though I love meeting people from different countries and industries as well, so all the time I am interacting myself with more and more people.
And given you've got this extrovert personality, and you mentioned how in IELTS you felt really comfortable, you're
Mm.
talking to a person, it is like easier to explain yourself. One common thing that people tell me when they go from IELTS into PTE, it's that with PTE, sometimes if we, for example, we may be talking right now and I want to tell you something, and then it's like, oh, I forgot the word. Because you have the person in front of you, it's almost like you've tried to find a way to express yourself. But with PT, it's like, oh, I don't know, maybe because we have a tricky question, or maybe because we get nervous and then you don't have that human interaction. So I find that people tend to get stuck more. How was that transition, given, you felt comfortable with IELTS? With PT, did you feel like maybe a bit under more stress, or you felt comfortable, or maybe because you went into PT after studying for a long time, maybe it hasn't been that bad?
Yeah, yeah. To be honest, yeah, I didn't have so much time for preparation besides of taking the lessons that actually help you to give you the guidance. So in my case, I went to PTE first, and then I tried IELTS. So I have the possibility to making PTE first, and I didn't feel 100% comfortable, even if I met the minimal points I was needing back then. I wanted to give it a try to a different test, and that's why I approached to the IELTS General, and I feel more comfortable doing that test. Not sure if I have a kind of influence of making the PTE test before, but according to me, I started with the PTE academic because most of the people I heard they were more inclined to do PTE first than IELTS, but for me was is more comfortable the IELTS. So I will say that this is depending on everybody, decision or preference.
Of course, and
Mm.
it's same, I guess, with like diets or stuff. I could come in and say, "Oh, broccoli is the best thing in the world," but maybe you don't like broccoli, or maybe you
Yeah,
don't process it the same way as other people. And with the exams, it might be the same. I
yeah,
think with PT, there is this fame that PT is really easy, and then everyone jumps into PT, and then
yeah.
everyone gets scared of IELTS. So I'm sure that some people watching this are probably going, "Thanks God, Christian, you're telling me that IELTS is something that you feel comfortable," because we just don't know. I normally tell students, look, it's worth looking at both exams. By
Yeah.
the way, link in the description for a big detail of both exams, what type of questions you will get. But sometimes you could be even trying that, like a practice test. And it's interesting how you started with PTE. One key thing I liked and that you mentioned is like maybe you, even though you got the score you needed, something in you was like, I don't feel that comfortable. Then you switched, or you said, let me do IELTS.
Yeah.
And then, things went well. And now you're back into PT study. But the challenge is, and we have talked about this off camera, is like we are not like in university. We are like with responsibilities. We are busy adults, and sometimes it's a matter of finding the time, or like trying to get the most from the time that we have when it comes to the preparation.
Yeah, yeah. No, totally aligned with you. And actually, in terms of the results, even if we make a comparison against both tests, I even got a higher scores in IELTS if we try to compare. So, and I think
Oh,
also
interesting.
part of that, I mean, both having higher than the minimal score, but in the IELTS, if we make the comparison table, because maybe I felt comfortable with the exam, I got a higher score. That could be part of the conclusion. But with the PTE, I felt that the questions could be more addressed for someone like that. My personal point of view is that you need more time to prepare the PTE than the IELTS. That's what I felt, and because the questions could be more. Not sure if the name of academics is because they are trying to evaluate a more academic kind of English, but in the end, I felt that the question from the PTA they were more structured or they demanded more, let's say, broader vocabulary to be used for the evaluation compared to the IELTS. So in my case, since I use, let's say, English for daily life, the IELTS I felt is more approachable in that regard. But with the PTE, I felt that if I was applying for a master's degree in Australia or a PhD, maybe we'll feel more comfortable doing the PTE academic, but preparing with that purpose, right? I'm going to write documents, papers, using, almost perfect English. So that's why I believe that this needs to be suitable for each one of the person, and depending also on your reality, right? If you have the time for preparation, if you are limited of time, I mean, you need to put very many variables on the balance before making the decision.
And I think you also touched on in a good point, which is not just going into the test without practice, without preparing. Whether you feel comfortable or not, it is worth reminding everybody watching that we want to prepare with time. Luckily, I'm seeing more and more students from South America, Spain, or let's say the Spanish speaking world, who are changing these dynamics of, at least very common in Venezuela, where we would be like, oh, I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do it later. And then people, we drag it, right?
Yeah.
And now I think it's almost like they're becoming a bit more Japanese, and they're contacting me saying, Emilio, I'm taking the exam in 9 months next year, 6 months plus, which is good because I've had people who say, hey, Emilio, I have my visa expiring in 2 weeks. I did the test 4 times, and you can imagine the level of stress. So I like how you are saying that no matter what exam you take, it is good to do it with time, and also to look at your situation to basically find out what might be the best decision rather than just jumping into one exam or the other.
Yeah, I think it's according to your reality, as you previously said. For example, if you already are applying for a visa, or you are doing the skill assessment because you want to, I don't know, validate your professional program in Australia with time, it makes sense, to do this with the right timing, and also be realistic according to your time. So if you have, more time available, I think you can prepare yourself with with some weeks, maybe 1 month. But if you are very limited time, I will suggest starting preparing yourself even earlier. At least 3 months before, 2 months, making the exam. And a good also practice could be, sign up to the exam already, so you can put the hard deadline because you're going to make the exam already in this date, and then you can start, organizing yourself for preparing for the test. But yeah, I will suggest, like, the best way is if you are working and you have limited time, try to start preparing at least three months in advance before making the test. Um, Either one what you choose, but yeah, I mean that is more proper timing. If you are very tight. Otherwise, if you have plenty of time, start practicing, start doing mock tests. The mock test can help you because you can start, practicing. For example, when you need to describe something in English, if you are not used to it, to do it, putting this at practice, it help you to, to be more faster when you need to give the answer in the exam. And with the PD academic, for example, you have very limited time to provide the answer as well. So you need to be very concise, practicing, for example, which are the key messages that it can collect from this image or graph. So that's why I think you need training to do it. Even if you can communicate yourself in English for a professional point of view, always with the exam, if you're not familiar with, you need preparation. That's for sure.
And by saying that, I would add up to it that there is the element of surprise. Anything can happen when you go into the test and you want to prepare with time. I always tell students in class, because sometimes when we do the interviews in IELTS, for example, or if we review the writing, or whether it is me showing them how to do something in PTE, they say, oh, it looks easy. Then we have an interview which could be very basic, quote unquote basic. And then they go, Emilio, I was so nervous and I didn't expect that question or this or that. And I say, look, no worries. You want to have the heart attack with me so that when you go into the exam, then there is less of that element of surprise and we have a higher chance of just doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no. I think one of the practices, because also I did the PTE twice and the IELTS once. And of course, I improved the points just giving the PTE twice, the second time, right, compared to the first time. Because as long as you are practicing, even doing the same test, the official test, you know that the test is randomly, is not the same. The question are not the same because they have many forms, available. But anyhow, the structure is quite similar. So as long as you are familiar, in my case, I didn't have. I had time, for example, to start preparing, understanding how the question looks like, but I didn't invest time, in making so many mock tests, entirely. That for sure will help you before making the test. So according to your reality, if you don't mind paying the test twice or three times, or you have, let's say, very limited budget, also we suggest please invest your time in your preparation, making mock tests, invest in someone, with the support like Emilio, it to address you in preparing you for the test, and then make the test, for sure. In my case, it was I was, let's say, very limited of time. I wanted to do it sooner, faster, but also, yeah, I was planning to start doing mock tests before making the test, but still I couldn't make it because I was very limited of time to organize myself in doing it.
And I'm sure lots of people will agree with you on that, because sometimes I send homework to students or even people contacting me and they go, I just wish I had an extra hour every day, but we all have only 24 hours,
Yeah,
and there is so much I can do with my time, and that can happen. So
yeah,
I think like pressing people and reminding them preparing with time will definitely help. And big thank you. Look, but I also have to say, Christian is someone that, despite being super busy, you put in the time, you did the homework, you asked questions. So it's like, as a teacher, I'm seeing like the right things that lead to success. I rarely was behind you, like, hey, don't forget to do the homework, but it was rather the opposite, more like, hey, Emilio, I'm sending you this, and, asking questions. And that's what you want to do. And if you're watching and you are thinking, okay, should I do IELTS? Should I do PTE? This is something that it's hard to just say in a video. And as Christian was saying, as we were discussing, it really depends on person to person. All right, guys, I hope that you liked this video. If you enjoyed this part of the interview, you will love this one, where we talk about the differences between life in Australia, life in Japan, culture shocks, comparing life in these countries and of course in South America. So I'll see you in this video right here. Thank you so much for watching.